Well, Martin, he's this year's undisputed champ, to use the boxing analogy, but numbers aside, what sets Lewis Hamilton apart?
Always turns up with his A game. He's got it all sorted out, whether it's practice, qualifying, the starts, the first corner, keeping the tyres intact, racecraft, strategy, and like all great champions, he has easily enough capacity to drive the car and think about what's going on around him. The best drivers always end up in the best cars.
Yeah, Ted, though, talking of best cars, the snooker player Ronnie O'Sullivan's been saying it's all about the car. Lewis could be smoking a cigar around the track. Why isn't that the case?
Well, because you can have the best car, and his teammate Valtteri Bottas has the best car as well. But it's only Lewis Hamilton who's had the ability, who's had the mental agility, and who's had the drive and the need. After all these championships, he still has the need. And where I think that's interesting, Craig, is that he still doubts himself. He still gets out of bed or starts the season thinking, can I really do this? Do I want to do this? How can I get better? And it's that work ethic that's seen him through to win a 7th World Championship. And that's what's the most impressive for me, and that's what marks out a great champion. Schumacher was the same. He always doubted himself, and that gave him something to prove.
Yeah, Martin, just give me a race, give me an incident this year that Lewis Hamilton produced that no one else could.
Just to finish and pick up on that, the reason the car's so good is because a driver like Lewis Hamilton has helped develop that car over many, many years now. It's fine just jumping in it and going fast. You've got to have a fast car in the first place. And a race that stands out for me, one of his greatest of all time, was the Turkish Grand Prix on a track that had been recently resurfaced, pouring with rain. People couldn't find grip. He lapped his teammate and he went on to win. And like all great champions, he won in a car that wasn't the fastest on the day.
OK, great stuff, Martin. Well, 18 of his rivals would certainly love to have the car that Lewis Hamilton has, but did they want to have him here this weekend for the season closer? Here's what some of them had to say.
I've always liked having all the competitors on track, especially a 7-time world champion like him, and hopefully he can be back this weekend.
Lewis, I hope he can come back as well. You know, he's the champ. And if he was missing the last event, it would be weird.
For sure, he knows how the track is, and even if he comes directly to qualifying, I would expect to be pretty fast.
That's how the superstars do it, you know, rock up last minute and jump in. No, I'm not sure. You know, we are obviously waiting on Lewis to return with a negative result. If he does, he'll be in the car.
Yeah, well, Martin, George Russell aside, and we'll talk about him a little bit later, the only driver who has had the same car as Lewis Hamilton is Valtteri Bottas. Lewis has beaten him 11-2 in terms of race victories this season. How good is Bottas? Because I guess that gives us some idea how good Hamilton is.
Would Bottas automatically win the World Championship like Lewis has done in that car? Probably. But I would put, for example, Max Verstappen ahead of him. But I think I would not want the job of qualifying just in front of or just behind Lewis Hamilton every weekend and giving him a run for his money. Very few people could do that. So Valtteri Bottas is a world-class driver. He's just not as good as Lewis Hamilton.
Yeah, only 3 men. Well, 2 men have beaten Hamilton over a season, Ted, Jenson Button and Nico Rosberg in 2016 when he won the title. Fernando Alonso ran him very close. What do you have to do to take Hamilton out of his comfort zone?
I think you have to get into his head as well. Motor racing, as far as they tell me, you drivers might confirm it, is a mental game as well. You need to be on your A game, as Martin says. You need to have the confidence and you need everything to be going right in order to turn up and risk your life, put your life on the line and go very quickly. Nico Rosberg found a way to upset Lewis Hamilton's mental equilibrium, and Jenson was just always there, and it was close enough, beat him on the balance of points, but then Lewis was going through a difficult time in his life at McLaren. He wasn't very happy at that time, and that allowed Jenson to beat him at that moment. But yeah, they really have to dominate him on the mental side, because in the driving, it's very difficult to beat him.
But I think what Rosberg did in 2016 to destabilise Lewis. Lewis took his foot off the gas at the end of 2015. Rosberg got ahead of steam, and a number of things happened. Lewis got a bit unlucky, but Nico got a bit crafty, a bit cheeky. I don't think Lewis would let that happen anymore.
OK, well, Lewis had twin goals for this season. One was winning a 7th world title. He's achieved that. The other was the ongoing fight against racism. He's become very much at the forefront in terms of British sportsmen, taking a lead in the Black Lives Matter movement. Here he was talking to our own Mike Wedderburn in October?
It was really easy for me because that's just how I've always been since I was a kid. I've never been afraid of standing up for what I believe. I've never, whilst, you know, maybe in times in my life I've been pushed to keep my mouth shut, but that's I don't think that inspires anyone, and that doesn't inspire progress, and I want to be a part of the solution, you know, shifting it for the future. You know, I'm winning all these races and I'm like, what is it? It doesn't actually mean anything unless you do something with the platform that it then provides you. And this came around this year, and I'm really, really proud grateful to be a part of the big fight that everyone out there is fighting for. It's a human rights issue, and there's many of them around the world. And when it comes to human rights, there's no limit to what you can do if you do stand for what you believe in.
Well, Ted, you made a fine documentary about Willie T. Ribbs, who was a black American driver who tried and nearly got into F1 in the 1980s. I know Lewis felt that his success would make it easier for F1 to become more diverse, and yet he remains the only black driver on the grid. Why is that?
Well, this is something that Hamilton wants to solve, and the FIA wants to solve as well, and Hamilton's doing it with the Hamilton Commission, and he believes, so he says it's all about encouraging young kids from black backgrounds to actually get into motor racing as a career, and then the science and technology subjects at school that will mean that they can come and be engineers, mechanics, and ultimately team bosses. That's what he wants to actually press. The image that he wants to portray is that this is a sport open to anybody, and he feels that it's been a white-dominated sport for too long, and it's something of an awakening. He describes it, doesn't he, Craig, as an awakening he's had this year. And the death of George Floyd was something that he wanted to use almost to fuel himself on a mental level, to give him mental energy. He needs to have something to be perfect for, and he wanted to do that, to use his platform, as you say, for change.
Well, it's going to be a lifelong mission, you suspect that. But what about, let's have a minute, Martin, just to think what Lewis might do after he stops driving. Might he remain in the sport, maybe run a team, possibly do something with the governing body? I mean, he's got all those interests outside in fashion and music. He's got all those millions of Twitter followers. What do you see his life being after motor racing?
Well, he always says he doesn't really want to hang around, and he certainly made clear to me he doesn't want to be a commentator like I've become, that sort of thing. But he's a very eloquent lad. He's a bright lad. He knows what he stands for. He knows what he wants to do. Does he have the skill sets to run a team? Normally, successful racing drivers don't, particularly because they're so focused on themselves rather than building a group of 1,000 people. Although I think Lewis would have some skills in that direction of building motivating a group of people. But who knows? He may never want to see the inside of a paddock again. And it's all about Jody Scheckter won a world championship and never wanted to drive a racing car again, really, and went off and did very well in other areas.